Alright, what we have here is the beginning of my Squaredrop trailer camper project. And this is the trailer portion of it. That's where it all starts. This is the chassis of the trailer. So it'll be the main structure of the trailer itself. Starting out with a rectangular frame measuring 64 inches wide. Scratch that, 62 inches wide by 120 inches long, or basically 5 feet by 10 feet, plus a little extra width over the 5 feet. So I can net out 59 inches on the interior width. And while 10 feet is a common measurement used by many of these types of trailers, more or less limited to 10 feet by the length of material that I can reasonably cart home in a 6.5 foot bed pickup. Otherwise I may have gone up to 11, but 10 will work. For plans, I'm using a utility trailer plan that's available free from a website called Trailer Sauce, and they have a plan for 6 foot by 10 foot tandem trailer. I'm just narrowing their plan and using a single axle, but otherwise I'll follow their plan pretty much to the letter, just removing a lot of the components that aren't needed for my application, such as the bed rails, I guess you would call them, the ramp, of course, and a few other niceties. So just kind of stripping down the trailer. So right now I've got this frame tacked together using my trusty Miller MIG welder. I'm mostly a self-taught welder. I've taken a couple classes, watched tons of YouTube videos, more than I'd like to admit, and just take my time with it. Obviously I don't have a welding table that's large enough to accommodate a project like this. Pretty much nobody does unless they're a pretty hardcore pro. So I'm using the 3-point planer method of laying this out, and Fireball Tools squares. And I believe it's Jason from Fireball Tools has a really good couple videos on how to use the 3-point system to give yourself a flat welding surface when you don't have a welding table large enough for your project size. And so I'm using two of these. I'm using 2 of these Fireball squares, and so far so good. This frame, like I said, it's just tacked together, but when I checked the diagonals, it was within the smallest unit that my old eyes can see, which is about a 1/16 of an inch. So that to me is plenty accurate. I'm doing this in my 2-car garage, which, like many 2-car garages, would never hold 2 cars. The amount of stuff in it, between my tools and some storage and whatnot. So I've kind of cleared some space, boxed some items that I can move around if I need to, and just making the best of it. But so far I think I'll be able to accommodate this 5 foot by 10 foot trailer in here. Like I said, I've been welding for a while as a self-taught welder. I'd say I have about 4 years of experience. I've mostly limited myself to more utility-oriented projects, various types of carts and shop made tools and projects, I would say that I never knew how much I needed a welder till I had one, but a lot of the stuff I need it for is stuff so I can do welding projects. So like for example, this steel rack or stand that you see back here, I built that pretty early on because it got pretty cumbersome to store 10-foot lengths of steel laying on the ground and stuff, and standing them up in the garage was pretty unsafe without having them contained in some type of cage or structure. Even under normal circumstances, it would be kind of dangerous to have them just standing free, but living in Los Angeles with earthquakes, always a possibility. It would be especially dangerous just to have those standing around. So I secured that cage to the wall, the studs, and built that out of, I think, 1-inch tubing, 1-inch 1/8 wall tubing. So it kind of stands there, and then I have these cross pieces that I can take these quick release clips out of, and then just kind of open up. Sorry, it's kind of tight in here, so but can open that up and then close it back up to securely contain or constrain, whatever the right word is, the steel stock that's in there. And then there's some storage space here for sheets and whatnot next to it. And then underneath I just tuck some cut off lengths that are still in usable sizes. I also built this tree that holds some of my bench mounted power tools, and I have each tool mounted on just an ordinary drop receiver hitch that you would find in the back of your truck or whatever with a hitch ball on it, but instead I have a tool mounted on each one, and then I just slot those hitches into a spot on this tree. I know it's not the best view on this, I wasn't really planning on showing it. So I have kind of this tree of bench mounted tools that just takes up the minimum amount of floor space by stacking it vertically. It's worked out pretty well for me, and I could put even more stuff up there at the top if it's not something too heavy to try to lift up there. And then each one of these tools is also held in by one of these spring clips. Back here you can see this one, so even though it's unlikely they could rattle their way out, there's really no danger that they could get snagged and pulled out or anything like that unless you purposefully remove that quick release pin, which has a spring retainer on it. So anyway, yeah, okay, so this shows how I'm setting up to weld the first internal cross member inside this rectangular frame. I'm not going to video every one of these, but I wanted to at least show the setup on one or two of them. So this first piece is actually being put in at the 8-foot mark, because with my 10-foot frame and plywood being commonly sold in 8-foot sheets, I need to use an 8-foot piece and then also a approximately 2-footer here at the end. So I needed extra support at the joint between the two sheets, and so I'm actually putting a 2-inch by 2-inch steel tube in here, even though all the other material in the project will be 1x2 1/8 wall steel tubing. So this is the only piece of 2x2, and I'm doing that purely for the added width of the tube. I could still use a 1x2 and attach some tabs or cleats or something to it using angle iron or whatnot, but I don't mind incorporating one piece of 2x2 tubing. So you can see here I've used this Fireball tool square with the tabs on it. The square is actually suspended by those tabs, and it's clamped on there So that indexes the square to the tubing, and the tubing is clamped into a perfect, or as perfect as I can get it, 90-degree joint with the side rail. And then the same thing over here on the opposite corner, another Fireball Tools square. And this is a different type that has some added features, and it's a little smaller one, but it still works in the same manner for this type of setup. So I'm using these tabs. It's indexed to the tops of the tubing, and then clamping it into the 90-degree joint. And these are all just butt joints, you know. I mean, that's how square tubing is normally done. So there's no mitering involved or anything like that in a project like this, except for a few places when it comes time to fabricate the tongue. And then I just use a 1, 2, 3 block like this to gauge whether or not the tubes are flushed up to each other. Even though the tubes index off the tabs and theoretically should be flush at the surface of each other, it's nice just to throw a 1, 2, 3 down and just kind of see if there's any light showing. And here there's basically none. The tubes are not perfectly rectangular in shape. They, it's like the shoulders basically are the square part of it. And oh, sorry about the compressor. I'll be back. Anyway, I was just saying that these tubes are not perfectly rectangular or square in shape. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of a bow in the face of the tube, and it's really right here at the shoulder where you kind of measure the squareness of the tube, or the full width of the tube, I guess you would say. That's where the 1 inch really happens. And then this might be slightly under 1 inch right here if you measured the width of the tube. So when I use a 1, 2, 3 block like this, I'm really just looking at kind of like the shoulder area to see if it's flush to the other tube. So that's how I've figured out how to do things. I don't know if that's the official way to do it, but it works for me. And then what I'll do is I'll drop a couple tacks right down in here, and same thing on the other side. Get that out of the way. Same thing on the other side here, right there. A couple tacks, a couple on the top, and then the same thing on the other side. Right here in this joint, I'll tack right there and right there, and then on top, I can't in this corner tack because the square is in the way. So this is a more conventional triangular square, so it's always going to occupy this corner, whereas that other design does permit you to still weld in your 90-degree corners like that. So that's why this one has an odd shape, but it's very useful. But anyway, so that's what's going to happen here. I'll get this tacked in, and then I'll tack in the other 7 or 8 of them. And once they're all tacked in, this thing will be very stable, and I'll be able to confirm the squareness of it one more time by shooting the diagonals. But even if they're slightly off at that point, it'll probably be too late to really do much about it. I don't, short of putting a winch strap on it and trying to rack it into square, which would be pretty difficult. It is what it is at that point. But like I said, before I started this cross piece, it was in square. But anyway, once they're all tacked in, then I'll weld it out, and the top portion of the chassis will be well on its way to being done. So that's where I'm at right now.